Thanks everybody for coming out tonight for the second presentation in our Pollinator web series through CFM and the Young Professionals. Just really quick before I introduce Anna, I wanted to put in a little plug for the Young Professionals. We're a relatively new group within CFM, made up of individuals 21 through 40, and really what we're trying to do is create a community of conservation-minded individuals to increase the collaboration and participation within CFM by younger folks. And so we're really excited to bring this web series and hopefully bring some new folks to the organization. And looking forward to doing more of these type of things in the future. So with that, I just want to welcome Anna Swerczek. She works at Quail Forever and Pheasants Forever with me. She is our Habitat Education Program Manager and manages all sorts of different pollinator programs and efforts across the country, working with our biologists and chapters. So with that, take it away, Anna.
All right, give me just a second and I will share my screen. Let it load.
While you're getting that up and running, Anna, I guess I'll just add a few more details. We're going to have you give your presentation. We'll have some Q&A at the end. During the presentation, if folks could have their microphones muted and cameras off, then we'll do a question and answer session afterward and hopefully have some time where we can turn on those cameras and have some discussions, a little more casual format. So I appreciate it.
Can you see my screen, Jake?
Looks great.
All right. So like Jake mentioned, I'm our Habitat Education Program Manager for Quail Forever and Pheasants Forever. And so to start off, I'm going to kind of talk about who we are before I just kind of dive into this pollinator talk and give you kind of a big overview picture. So we're a nonprofit organization. Pheasants Forever was started in 1982 in Minnesota, and we've just grown since then. Something that's really unique about our organization is that we have a unique model that 100% of the proceeds that our chapters raise actually stay with them. So all of that money stays local, which goes back into habitat acres. So that's something kind of unique to where only our memberships come back up to headquarters. The rest of it stays local to help do habitat mission there. We have over 200 field biologists throughout the country. These biologists work with landowners or on public ground as well. And a lot of what they do all ties back to pollinator habitat. Along with that, we also have habitat education programs on a national level that we implement locally. A couple of those big ones are our Pollinator Habitat Outreach Program. Our chapters use this program a lot, and they connect with 4-H groups in schools and local community groups and plant pollinator habitat on the ground. Another one that we are piloting, it's in year 2, is a Milkweed in the Classroom program. So this is coming soon to where we're going to expand outside of Nebraska, so it'll be available in Missouri. And so chapters will sponsor kits. So local classrooms can grow milkweed in the classroom, learn about habitat, and learn about pollinators and the monarch butterfly. So that was kind of a really quick overview, kind of who PF is and QF and what we do. So we're here tonight to talk about pollinators. So a lot of times the first thing that comes to mind when we talk about pollinators are bees and butterflies. But there's a really big diversity of pollinators. So a lot of things that are included within that are hummingbirds, bats, moths, flies, beetles, even spiders can be hummingbirds along with wasps. So it's not just bees and butterflies. When we talk about the diversity of pollinators, we're talking about all of these species. And so why are they so important? So 75% of our flowering plants rely on pollinators. And a lot of our crops as well depend on pollinators. It's estimated around $15 billion worth of revenue is due to pollinators. More than 90 species of our United States specialty crops require pollination. A lot of these crops will actually rely on honeybees, and they will bring honeybees in to help pollinate that crop. And so one of kind of the more iconic pollinators, I don't think my screen changed, there we go. Most iconic pollinators that we have is the monarch butterfly. So what makes this butterfly so unique is that it migrates from Mexico all the way up to Canada and all the way back down. And it does this in 4 to 5 generations. And so that's kind of what makes this butterfly so unique. It has the longest migration out there. And I remember growing up always finding monarch and finding the caterpillars, but their population is in decline. And so this last overwintering is 2.1 hectares is what they measured. So how they measure and they monitor the monarch population is they measured the area that the butterflies cover down in Mexico where they overwinter. And so as you can see, over the last 2 decades, they've actually declined by 90%. So one of the main reasons, and there's a lot of reasons on why they're declining, but a lot of it ties back to the lack of diversity and the lack of milkweed across the Midwest. And so monarchs will only lay their eggs on milkweed plants. And there's over 120 different species of milkweed within the US. And so that's kind of one of the most important species of plants to the monarch butterfly. Another really important pollinator that I kind of already mentioned earlier is the honeybee. And so they bring an annual, some of these numbers vary, but an annual value to agriculture is $10 billion. And that's just honeybees, so it's not including your native bees. And so super important species, and they are also in decline. So this graph is a little bit different than the previous one. This is actually showing percentage of honeybee loss. So over the last few years, they've been averaging 40% or more loss, which is not sustainable over a long period of time. And this is kind of alarming because, like I had mentioned, 1 out of every 3 bites of food that we eat each day is reliant on pollinators. It's reliant on these honeybees. And so native bees are also important, but they're a little bit harder to track for population. So we can measure monarch butterflies, and we can talk to all of our honeybee keepers and see how many hives they have, but native bees are a lot harder to track. There's over 4,000 native bee species. 70% of them nest in the ground, and 30% of them are in tunnels. And so because we know that the monarchs are declining and the honeybees are declining, our native bees are also on the decline. And something really cool about our native bees is that they're actually 5 times more efficient than honeybees are at pollination in the US, which is because they're going to be outside pollinating when it's colder out and when it's warmer out than when your honeybee is going to be out, just because they've evolved within this climate. And so they'll go out when it's colder and when it's warmer. But they also require a diversity of plants, and they need that direct soil access and sun hitting the ground, because most of them are ground nesters. And so, like the monarch butterflies and the honeybees and the native bees, they all visit these native wildflowers, but they need a diversity of these flowers to be able to stay healthy. So like we as people need a diversity of food in our diets. We can't just eat pizza every day. We're going to start feeling sick. These honeybees and monarchs and our native bees need a diversity of wildflowers throughout the year to feed on, to keep them healthy. And so when we're looking at habitat and pollinator habitat, we want a diversity of wildflowers, not just in one bloom period, but all throughout the year. So starting in mid-April all the way through late fall, we want a multitude of flowers blooming in each of those periods. So as we're creating this habitat for pollinators, a lot of our plants, our species list that we're planting is going to be over 40 different species of grasses and wildflowers in that mixture to provide that habitat for them. So some might wonder why Pheasants Forever and Quail Forever really care about these pollinators, and why we're so interested in establishing quality pollinator habitat. I mentioned earlier kind of all of these awesome impacts that we're having, and our field biologists are working all across the US creating this habitat. But pollinator is also very habitat to our pheasant and quail chicks. So for the first 6 to 8 weeks of their lives, they actually are not eating grain. They are eating small, soft-bodied insects, which you can find in pollinator habitat. Along with pheasants and quail, 96% of our North American bird species feed on insects to their young. And caterpillars alone are an important food source to at least over 300 of our North American bird species. So if these pollinators are decreasing, that's a food source for a lot of our native bird species as well. So how do we address this decline? The best thing that we can do is to manage for pollinators, which is to create this diversity of pollinator habitat. And so we look at these big landscapes. You can kind of do something no matter where you are. So pollinators are also in urban areas. More than 80% of Americans live in urban areas. And this is kind of where it gets a little bit hard to interact with people on here. But I'm guessing a lot of you on this webinar today will more than likely live in an urban area. And so after you've learned about pollinators, that they're declining and we need to do something about this, what can you do? And is this urban area really making an impact? Well, research is showing that it does. Populations of many species of pollinators are also reappearing across urban areas because of habitat being installed there. A research done from the Field Museum of Chicago did research across the whole city, and they figured out that there's 18 million milkweed stems currently in Chicago. So this is obviously a very urban area where people are planting this milkweed in their backyard. And that's creating an awesome impact. That's what those monarch butterflies need and other pollinators need. And they estimated we need 1.8 billion new milkweed stems across North America to save the monarchs. And 30% of that need of those essential new milkweed stems can actually be added in cities. So there's something that you guys can do as well when you're thinking about what can you do in your own backyard to help pollinators. So I have a couple programs that we've started that I haven't mentioned yet that can kind of help make this impact. Our first one is Miles for Monarchs. And so this is more of a outreach campaign that we've partnered with Monarch Joint Venture to help provide education on the monarch butterfly, on pollinators, and just to get some outreach about them to all of your families and friends. And so this is a way to engage participants to kind of virtually run, walk, swim, or paddle the monarch migration. So we have 3 different sign-up periods right now for this. And one of them is going on right now in the month of June to cover our Pollinator Week. So you guys can sign up at that link that's located on the PowerPoint, and I can add that as well to our chat link. So you know where to go, so you can sign up to participate in this virtual run, walk, and help educate others about the monarch butterfly and about pollinators. The second thing that we have going on isn't quite live yet, so you guys are actually the first outside of Pheasants Forever to hear about this. During Pollinator Week, which is June 21st through the 27th, we are going to be offering National Pollinator Habitat Kits. So these kits are going to include 6 native wildflowers, along with a milkweed species in there for the monarch butterfly, along with a sign, a sticker, and an e-planting guide so you guys know how to establish these wildflower plugs. And along with that, you'll also get a Quail Forever or Pheasants Forever membership, whatever one you choose. And so you'll be able to purchase one of these kits at a super reduced price to be able to provide and plant some of this pollinator habitat in your own backyard. So like we mentioned earlier, it doesn't really matter if you're in an urban or rural area. You can plant this habitat and it's going to make a really awesome positive impact on the landscape. So I talked pretty quickly on that. So I'm going to stop sharing and you guys can ask any questions you have, and I can go into more detail and talk about more about pollinators if you guys have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. That was a terrific presentation and a quick kind of 101 on pollinators. And some exciting programs and opportunities coming up too.